Ethan Carter stepped onto his porch, coffee in hand, expecting nothing more than a quiet morning. The air was crisp, the sun barely peeking over the rooftops. He took a deep breath, ready to enjoy a few peaceful moments before the chaos of the day set in. But as he glanced toward his driveway, his stomach dropped. The space where his car had been parked last night was completely empty. For a moment, his brain refused to process what he was seeing. He blinked, shook his head, and stepped forward as if getting closer would somehow make his car reappear. But it was gone. His chest tightened. Stolen? Had someone actually stolen his car from his own driveway? Heart pounding, he spun on his heel and rushed inside, nearly spilling his coffee as he fumbled for his phone. He pulled up the feed from his Ring camera, scrubbing through the footage as fast as his fingers could move. Then he saw it, a tow truck, rolling up in the dead of night, hooking up his car like a thief in the dark and hauling it away. Ethan's jaw clenched. No knock. No warning. No reason. His mind raced. He hadn't parked illegally. There were no tickets, no notices stuck to his door, nothing to indicate this was supposed to happen. What the hell was going on? Without wasting another second, he dialed the HOA's emergency line. The phone rang, and rang. Come on, pick up. Finally, a voice answered, sounding as though she had just been rudely awakened. HOA office, this is Linda, the woman on the other end said, utterly disinterested. Yeah, my car was towed last night, Ethan snapped, trying, and failing, to keep his voice level. From my own driveway. I need to know why. There was a pause, some clicking in the background, and then more silence. It was towed due to unauthorized parking, Linda finally said, her voice flat. Ethan frowned, gripping the phone tighter. Unauthorized? In my own driveway? That's what the record says. Ethan's frustration boiled over. This has to be a mistake. I've lived here for 5 years. This is my property. Linda sighed, clearly done with the conversation before it had even begun. Sir, if you have a complaint, you can bring it up at the next HOA meeting. In the meantime, you can retrieve your vehicle from the impound lot after paying the fine. Ethan's jaw locked. Fine? How much? $500. His free hand curled into a fist. That's ridiculous. That's my car, my driveway. Linda let out a bored hum, as if she had heard this exact argument 1,000 times before. Actually, she said, sounding almost amused, according to our records, your car is still on your property. Ethan blinked. What? The vehicle registered under your name is currently listed as parked at your address. His brain stuttered over the words. He knew what she was saying, but it didn't make sense. So if my car is here, then what car did you tow? Linda's voice remained unfazed. According to our system, the vehicle that was removed does not belong to you. Ethan froze. His grip on the phone went slack for a second before he caught himself. Then whose car did you take? There was another pause, and when Linda answered, she said it with complete indifference, as if she were telling him the weather. Well, sir, that would be Ryan Mitchell's. Ethan barely registered hanging up the phone before he was already storming across the street, his pulse hammering in his ears. He didn't even bother knocking, he balled his fist and pounded on the door. The wood rattled under the force of it. A few agonizing seconds passed before the door creaked open just a sliver. Ryan Mitchell stood there, half awake, his hair sticking up in every direction, a threadbare bathrobe hanging loosely over a wrinkled t-shirt. He squinted at Ethan like he was looking into the sun. Dude, it's barely 7 in the morning. Who died? Ethan planted both hands on the doorframe, leaning in. You, he said flatly. Or at least, you're about to wish you had. The HOA just towed your car. Ryan blinked. His mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, it looked like his brain had simply shut down from the sheer absurdity of the statement. He scratched his head, yawned, and frowned. What? They thought it was mine. They took it last night. I just spent the last 10 minutes trying to figure out why my car was gone, only to find out the idiots at the HOA towed yours instead. Ryan ran a hand down his face, rubbing his temples like the words physically hurt to process. Wait, I don't. Then his eyes widened. Oh, crap. Ethan crossed his arms, already knowing he wasn't going to like whatever was about to come out of Ryan's mouth. Explain. Ryan groaned and rubbed the back of his neck. Okay, so. I got home late last night. Maybe had a couple of drinks. Mayabe wasn't paying close attention to where I was parking. Ethan inhaled sharply. Ryan. Ryan gave him a sheepish smile. Look, in my defense, our cars are basically twins. Dark gray, same model, same body shape, it was an honest mistake. Ethan just stared at him. Ryan. They hauled your car to the impound lot. The HOA thinks it's mine. And he exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose, I was just told I have to pay $500 to get it back. Ryan winced. Oh. Yeah. That sucks. Ethan's eye twitched. That's all you have to say? Ryan hesitated, then grinned weakly. Well, technically, since it's my car, should be the one paying, right? Right. So let's go. Yeah, see, about that. Ethan froze. His patience was hanging by a thread. Ryan, he said slowly, carefully, like speaking to a misbehaving child. What? Now. Ryan let out a nervous laugh, scratching the back of his head. So, funny story. I was supposed to pay my HOA fees last month, but, I kind of forgot. Ethan stared at him. Forgot. Yeah. And apparently, when you don't pay, they put a hold on all your HOA privileges, which, I guess, includes getting your car out of impound. Ethan closed his eyes, willing himself to stay calm. And just how much do you owe? Ryan let out a slow, hesitant breath. $2,000. Ethan's entire body locked up. A beat passed. Then another. What, he said, his voice dangerously quiet, the actual hell, Ryan. Ryan held up both hands in surrender. Okay. Look, don't freak out. I have a plan. Ethan groaned. Ryan, I already hate it. Ryan slung an arm over his shoulder, grinning. Buddy, trust me. We're gonna get my car back, without paying a cent. Ethan didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stood there, staring into the abyss. He already knew. This was going to be a disaster. Ethan gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. The impound lot loomed ahead, a grim, rusted fortress of bureaucracy and bad decisions. The towering barbed wire fence wrapped around it like a prison, with fading red signs plastered on the gates, City Impound, No entry without payment. Ryan, slouched in the passenger seat, let out a low whistle. Man, this place looks like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. You sure we're not about to break someone out of a military detention camp? Ethan shot him a glare. I swear to God, if you don't fix this. Ryan held up his hands. Relax. I said I've got a plan. Ethan exhaled sharply and pulled into the lot. They stepped out, gravel crunching beneath their feet as they approached the small office building at the front. A thick, grimy glass window separated them from a hunched-over man inside, a half-eaten donut balancing on the edge of his keyboard. His name tag read Hank. He didn't even glance up, just continued scribbling away at a crossword puzzle like they didn't exist. Ethan cleared his throat. We're here to pick up a car. Hank didn't look up. Plate number. Ryan rattled it off. Hank lazily typed it into his computer, still chewing. Then, with the enthusiasm of a man who had lost all faith in humanity, he mumbled, $500. Ethan clenched his jaw. Yeah, about that. We're not paying, Ryan cut in smoothly, leaning against the counter with an easy smile. See, the HOA towed it by mistake. It was parked legally. Hank took a slow bite of his donut, chewed, swallowed. Still $500. Ethan exhaled through his nose. But it wasn't even supposed to be towed. The HOA screwed up. Hank finally glanced up, smirking. There's a solution for that. Ethan felt hope flicker for a split second. Really? Yep, Hank said, stretching. You pay double, and I'll write priority customer on the receipt. Ryan let out a low whistle. Wow. You must be a real blast at parties. Ethan was seconds away from flipping the entire counter over. Ryan sighed dramatically and pulled out his phone, stepping away from the counter as if making a call. Yeah, this is HOA Director Stevenson, he said, voice suddenly deep and authoritative. I need immediate release on a towed vehicle, yes, under HOA Emergency Ordinance 7H. Hank didn't even blink. You're not HOA. Ryan groaned and hung up. Had to try. Just then, the door swung open behind them. Ethan turned, and froze. Greg. The smug-faced HOA enforcer. Greg smirked the second he saw them. Oh, this is Rich, he said, arms crossed. Let me guess. You're here to whine about the rules again? Ethan's teeth ground together. What the hell are you even doing here? Greg shrugged. Just making sure impound policies are enforced. Ryan snorted. Oh, so babysitting actual criminals wasn't enough? Now you're harassing people at the tow lot, too? Greg's smirk didn't fade. Rules are rules. And then Ryan did something that made the entire room shift. He pulled up his security camera footage on his phone and hit play. The screen flickered to life in grainy night vision. And there, clear as day, was Greg himself, standing next to the tow truck driver, muttering. Yeah, I don't care who owns it. Just take it. The air in the room went still. Greg's smug expression faltered. Ethan and Ryan stared him down. Hank, who had been completely indifferent up until this moment, actually leaned forward. Huh, Hank muttered. That's interesting. Greg scoffed, shifting uncomfortably. That could be anyone. Ryan grinned. Really? 'Cause it kinda looks like the same dude standing right in front of us. Ethan crossed his arms. What do you say, Hank? Does blatant HOA corruption warrant a free car release? Hank let out a deep sigh, like he really didn't want to deal with any of this but also wasn't about to get caught in an HOA scandal. You know what? Hank muttered, clicking a few buttons on his computer. Screw it. You're free to take the car. Greg's face twisted in rage. Ethan grinned. Looks like you lose, Greg. Greg's nostrils flared, his entire body rigid with barely contained fury. But he had no comeback. No excuses. Nothing. He spun on his heel and stormed out. Ryan punched the air. Boom. Justice. Ethan exhaled, shaking his head. Let's just get the car and get out of here. Ryan grinned, clapping him on the back. Buddy, we're not done yet. We're taking this all the way to the HOA. Ethan stared at him. For once, he actually agreed. Ethan had never been a fan of HOA meetings. They were long, tedious, and filled with self-important board members who loved the sound of their own voices. But this time, he walked into the meeting hall with a purpose. Ryan, practically vibrating with energy beside him, clutched his phone like a prized weapon. Olivia followed close behind, her sharp gaze sweeping over the room like a lawyer preparing for battle. The meeting hall was packed, more residents than usual, a clear sign that word of the tow truck fiasco had spread. At the front of the room, seated behind a long table, were the HOA board members. Walter Griffin, the HOA president, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat, already looking irritated by the crowd. Greg sat beside him, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. "All right, let's begin," Griffin droned. "First, we'll go over the financial report." Ethan shot his hand up. "Actually, I'd like to discuss something urgent before we get to that." Griffin pinched the bridge of his nose. "I assume this is about your so-called wrongful towing?" Ethan smiled. "Oh, it's not so-called anymore." Ryan shot to his feet, holding up his phone. "We have video proof that Greg here," he gestured toward the HOA enforcer, whose face had gone rigid, ordered a tow he knew was illegal. A murmur rippled through the room. Neighbors leaned forward, eyes darting between Greg and the phone screen. Griffin let out a forced chuckle. "Now, let's not jump to conclusions." Olivia cut him off. "There are no conclusions to jump to. We have solid proof that the HOA knowingly towed a legally parked car and tried to fine an innocent homeowner." Greg scoffed, leaning back. "Oh, come on. That could be any." Ryan pressed play. The room fell silent as the grainy night vision footage flickered to life. Greg's own voice filled the room. "Yeah, I don't care who owns it. Just take it." The reaction was immediate. A woman near the back gasped. A man in the front row muttered, "Are you kidding me?" Griffin's face paled. This is out of context." "Oh, we're just getting started," Olivia said coolly. She pulled out a folder and tossed it onto the table. "We did some digging, and it turns out that's not the only issue with this HOA." Greg shifted uncomfortably. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What's the real reason you wouldn't release Ryan's car?" A heavy silence filled the room. Then Olivia opened the folder and dropped the bombshell. "The HOA has been misusing funds." The tension in the room spiked. Several homeowners started murmuring, glancing at one another. Ethan folded his arms. Ryan's late HOA fees? Turns out they weren't actually late. They were marked unpaid because the HOA had been funneling money into private maintenance projects. Specifically, Olivia added, turning to Greg, a renovation project on a certain board member's house. Gasps. Outrage. A woman in the front row stood up. "You mean to tell me they've been overcharging us for years while our roads and sidewalks are falling apart?" Griffin wiped his forehead. "This is completely true," Olivia finished. "Because we have receipts." Ryan grinned, holding up his phone. "And we made sure to send copies to every homeowner. Check your email." The crowd erupted. People started pulling out their phones, scrolling through the evidence. More and more voices rose in anger. "This is theft. You've been stealing our money. This whole board needs to go." Griffin looked like he was about to have a stroke. Then, in a move that made the entire situation even worse, Greg stood up, pulled out his phone, and made a call. Ethan's stomach dropped. A few moments later, the door to the meeting hall burst open. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. The entire room fell into stunned silence. "Who called the cops?" someone whispered. Then Greg, smug as ever, gestured toward Ethan, Ryan, and Olivia. "These 3, Greg announced, with a straight face, are trespassing and harassing board members. I want them removed immediately." Ethan's entire body locked up. The audacity. The sheer nerve. Olivia, however, didn't flinch. She turned to the cops, smiled, and hit play on her phone. The same security footage, the one of Greg ordering the illegal tow, played out loud in the silent room. One of the officers frowned, looking at Greg. "Wait a second. You're the guy on the video." Greg paled. That's... The other officer sighed. "This isn't a criminal matter. This is a civil dispute." He looked at Griffin, then at Greg. "You want to report trespassing? Fine. But what I see here is a board trying to cover its own corruption." Greg flushed red. Griffin looked ready to pass out. The officers didn't arrest anyone. They simply gave Ethan and Ryan a nod and walked out, leaving Greg, Griffin, and the rest of the HOA board humiliated in front of the entire neighborhood. Ryan let out a low whistle. Well, that backfired spectacularly. The room erupted. "Vote them out," someone yelled. "New leadership," another neighbor chimed in. "This HOA is done." Ethan turned to Olivia. "Think that's enough to take them down?" She smiled. "Oh, we're just getting started." The fallout was immediate. Within hours of the disastrous HOA meeting, the neighborhood was in full revolt. The video of Greg ordering the illegal tow, combined with the financial corruption evidence, spread through the community like wildfire. Angry homeowners flooded the HOA's inbox, demanding answers. The Facebook group Ryan started, Residents Against HOA Madness, exploded overnight. Dozens of neighbors joined, each with their own horror story of unfair fines, ridiculous rules, and power-hungry board members. The pressure was too much to ignore. Just days later, Griffin, the HOA president himself, resigned. The official statement cited personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth: he had no choice. And Greg? Fired. He left in disgrace, his reputation shattered, after his stunt with the cops backfired spectacularly. The HOA was in ruins, and the neighborhood had won. But the victory didn't stop there. With the old leadership gone, residents voted in a new board, one that actually cared about transparency. Absurd rules were repealed. Unjust fines were erased. And as a final poetic twist, the HOA reached out to Olivia with an offer to become their new legal consultant. Ethan nearly dropped his coffee when she told him. "You're telling me," he said, stunned, "that the same HOA we just destroyed wants to hire you?" Olivia just smirked. "It's easier to fix the system from the inside." Ryan whistled. "And you're getting paid to do it? That's next-level revenge." To celebrate, they threw a massive cookout, right in front of the HOA office. The smell of grilled steaks and burgers wafted through the air, a final unspoken message to the old regime. As Ethan looked around, watching his neighbors finally feel at home again, he realized something. For the first time in years, the HOA wasn't a source of frustration, it actually worked for the people. Maybe not every battle against HOA Karens ends in victory. But sometimes, the good guys win. Have you ever felt powerless against HOA, or Karen, rules? Share your experiences below, let's see who had it worse.